Hey, welcome everybody to Healthcare 2023. And we have a wonderful panel today, really exciting across
very faint.
the healthcare future and today's issues. So I just want to welcome you. I'm actually in Poland right now, not in San Francisco. My background is
I'm trying to get the gentleman on the screen.
Oh, there's noise, Marty. So my background is in 35 years in Silicon Valley, investing in different companies. Currently, I'm a part of the Inspire Global Ventures, advisor into $100 million focuses on AI and fintech and sciences. Can you hear me? Okay, good. But let's talk about me. We're going to cover quite a few interesting subjects. I wanted to start introducing our panel and have everybody in New York talk about then if you can do the
I don't know. I wasn't in here.
It's on his end.
Vadim?
You have to tell him.
Is there a number we can call in like we did yesterday for Sam?
Where is Marty?
Marty.
Ask him to give tell him to put his phone number in the chat and we'll call him.
I think we're losing time, so why don't we get started?
Marty,
You didn't.
we're trying to get his phone number.
It's very faint. No one. I'll take it. I'll take it over. The volume's too low.
I can call him off of this like we did yesterday with Tim. Do you have his number?
No, let's just let Steve take over.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have
Yeah, I think it was
No, Steve's gonna do it. All right.
Oh, are you thinking of the other?
Thanks, Steve.
our topic is healthcare and venture capital.
Folks, let's quiet down so we can do the event.
Our topic is healthcare and venture capital, and I think we're very fortunate to have a diverse set of speakers. Fred Nazem is here with us today, who is an icon in venture capital for the last 25 years. Anyone who's been involved in the venture capital space should instantly know and recognize his name. I've been around a while, but I'm a healthcare consultant. We have here another consultant in the healthcare space with a focus in the biotech area. And we have a client of mine. He's the CEO of Viomerse. Viomerse is commercializing technology for the training of surgeons and physicians, utilizing augmented reality and artificial intelligence. So we're here to bring you a bit of a balanced approach. I'm going to ask Fred to address at a high level where he sees healthcare moving towards areas of interest, the evolution, the revolution, movement of the healthcare space. Fred, please.
Thank you very much. Exactly what was said here. We are trying to see if we can give you some ideas before you leave about what we think the future looks like. So let me start by saying that I have over the years, it's more than 25 by the way, I'm 52 years into
I thought you were 36, so I gave you the benefit of the doubt.
Anyway, thank you for the use there. I have spent my lifetime basically investing thematically. And as Seneca said for BC, look for the seed of the idea. So today we're going to share those seeds with you. What are the ones that are going to drive the next 10 to 20 years in our view, this field of medicine? The whole socioeconomic spectrum, but medicine in particular. I see three very substantial seeds that is going to cause, sorry, let me just get the three seeds that is causing the current healthcare revolution. I'm very convinced that something is going on very substantial in healthcare as we sit here and talk about it. And the beauty of America basically and our market is that it's not only invention. We even take inventions from everywhere else. It is innovation. We take that stuff and build companies around it and go forward with it. So if you know the seeds of the ideas, which I'm going to be talking a little bit about, and you take inventions that are out there. We'll talk about, for instance, NVIDIA, which is my biggest position that I own in my personal portfolio. That is a fantastic invention, what Jason Hung had done. But how do we innovate around that? That is the application of those kinds of things into healthcare or anything else that you're interested in. I look at, anyway, we'll get to that issue in a minute. So innovation and invention together is really the way to go forward. It has always been the case, but it's going to be more and more the case going forward in healthcare. So let me start by one of the big seeds, one of the big themes. That is genomics and cellular medicine. We don't use a lot of it. It's beginning to seep in more and more every day. So what is important there? Healthcare needs genotypic information. What we have is current practice of medicine uses only phenotypic information. This is too late of an information. Something happened to you, you got a disease, now you look at it, and based on phenotype, and then you address it, and you have the current medicine, which is essentially sick care. That's why it is too late by the time we attend to. Until we get sick, we don't go see our doctors when we are healthy. We go see them when we are sick. We go to the hospital, which is a sick place. So that sick care is very necessary. We get sick, all of us, from time to time, but it's not the only one, which is now the story of our medicine today, legacy medicine. So we need genotypic information added to phenotypic information, which then allows to what is known as epigenetic. You can modify genes, you can do some things to it that a lot of cures come from it. All right, so proactive, holistic healthcare, which we came to be calling it whole care, which is now beginning to pick up. A lot of people talk about whole care is like healthcare and sick care together, and regimens that that allows it. I spent the last 8 years, I should have been doing it. I thought it was going to take less time, building a company called Rejuvenan. And I'm not going to talk a lot about it today because we're in the midst of a merger and all that, so it's not complete. So it's not the right place to talk about it. But a lot of these thoughts have been put together into that company. And so the current legacy system is really totally allopathic. That is, that depends on pills, giving you pills to go home and give you more pills until you die. Basically, these pills, exactly what it is. What happens is that they remove the symptoms of what you're suffering. They're not curative. They don't cure you. And so I kept talking about this thing, and now so many people are coming around. I'm not the only one. There are lots of other better people than I who talk about this thing in the business. In any event, so longevity requires longitudinal care, not episodic care. Not when you get sick to see a doctor, but longitudinally, how do I deal with my health care over my lifespan? That's longevity comes from that kind of care. So this is why I wanted to introduce the subject to this audience about the seed that is involved in here, genetic or cellular. We'll be happy to go into details and question. So I'm just jumping over some thoughts on top so that you can have it. So science, and we found out that technology is now going to drive healthcare more than almost anything else. So the combination, you're going to have companies that you're going to be seeing the next decade or two are going to be science and technology-driven healthcare companies. And we speak to that issue. Let me just give you the practical side of it. You're really foolish not to go for a Cologuard, which is a test, blood test. It'll tell you that some 65 cancers that you have proclivity to get it. That is available there. Cologuard test is fantastic. You don't want to wait until somebody told you got cancer. This could be very, very helpful to knock it off. If you had a sudden cardiac attack in your immediate family or the next of kin, you'd be foolish not to go and get to find out if you get the gene and it's really your family, because for sure your chance of getting a sudden cardiac attack is very high, 60-70% higher, and so on. I can tell you one of the greatest diseases that people are not paying attention to that is going to cause is really an epidemic is everybody talks about Alzheimer, but PD, Parkinson's disease, is the epidemic. I addressed this group or Marty's group in the past about how important that is. That is growing like crazy because we're also exposed to chemicals, home chemicals, eating, all kinds of stuff. That causes Parkinson's disease. You can find out what if you have it or not. Give you a good example. The co-founder of Google found out that his mother had PD. As an Abkhazi Jew, most Abkhazi Jews have the tendency of getting this disease because of that gene, synuclein, in particular LRR2. He had it 35 years ago. Because discovered it early, he went and did the test, he discovered it early, he's prevented it and cheated death, if you will, for doing what it was fantastic stuff. So we got a huge amount of science and beautiful stuff out there. It's not being used. We keep using the old goddamn medicine. And everybody is a doctor. You go there. My kids, both of them were physicians, first grade, went to the best school. I saw them what they teach them. It's about disease-based. It's not about health-based. Anyway, so big conversation to have.
Do you guys hear me?
I think artificial intelligence, of course, is de rigueur these days. Everybody talks about it. We have been using it. I started California AI some 42 years ago in San Francisco area. You didn't have the computing power to really drive it. The idea was right. Now we have the computing power. NVIDIA with the N100 is really phenomenal piece of work. And so a massive platform shift is about to happen to us. They say it's a big thing. It is bigger than what they say to you. It's a massive platform shift. Going from the platform of the linear processing and what we have in, so what we know as what high tech is today, to this multi-processing capability in a world, that NVIDIA type of world that is dawning on us. Now, so there was a lot of conversation here today about artificial intelligence. I want to add a few practical stuff and I think thoughtful stuff that I learned from a lot of what's going on and a lot of people that I respect. This platform shift is going from Moore's law, of the old, to what was linear processing to GPUs, which is what H100 and the rest of the NVIDIA products are about. It's amazing. There was one of the fastest, speediest adoption rate. Speediest of 100 million GPT-4 AI users in the first 60 days of its introduction. And so there is tremendous amount of interest in this thing, and it's going to go very, very fast. Unfortunately, as a result, we are sitting in an AI bubble. So some of the things they talked about today is very important. So you don't want to get into that bubble. What should you be looking for in using AI in medicine? And I'm going to be speaking to that about in a minute.
Right.
Ease of use is already into the picture, which is very interesting, leveraging foundational models via APIs, so you don't have to repeat redoing your database all over the place. So you can use APIs to get to where you were before into different applications that you want to get before. The current AI usage, the big LLM, large models, they take a lot of garbage in from the web, then they don't go through a lot of cleanup, and then what they call it hallucinations, and the stuff still is not very clean. But leave it to the big guys. They have all the H100s, they can afford it. They really have a lot of big moat. You cannot beat them at it, and that's not something we want in healthcare to go there. We can use them as a way and be mindful of the mistakes involved. But we have a very interesting opportunity to do something unbelievable thing in healthcare using AI. I'll get to it in a minute. Healthcare companies can use much smaller, not LLMs, domain-specific models that often utilize use case scenarios. We've done that at Rejuvenan. Much cheaper, much easier, much more, it's clean data. In other words, you're hunting within the database that is yours, that's healthcare. It's not all kinds of stuff all over the place. And it's a specific area of your expertise. Our companies, the legacy companies, are full of information. They have a lot of data. So data, which is very important, resides in all these companies. Now we need to really bring them alive. And so my suggestion is to have that middle market, that market that is essentially domain specific. So you're a cardiologist, and cardiology feeds are very, very much the case from the literature, New England Journal of Medicine and stuff, but more importantly, from the stuff that you have already in your practice, whatever your product in cardiology is. Let me just, generally, my observation is it took the revolution, which was the technology that we know today, the internet, took the third generation for the companies to become profitable and important. The first two generations were essentially DOA after a while. So we are now at the best in the beginning of the second generation. So don't get fooled into getting into this chat GPT conversation and dropping a lot of money into it in healthcare and finding that it's not going to go anywhere. The successful people are going to come from what I think, these domain specific, really what AIs could do for anything we do in life, to be an assistant to us. Not to get rid of our brains, but to get assistant to us, not to get rid of our data and the practices that we have. So that kind of reality will get you to a company that could last and become one of the big ones in the business. I don't want to go on because I got very smart people sitting next to me, so they can do the rest of it. But I'll go very quickly in saying that domain expertise and data have got gravity. If you got data and you got domain expertise, that has huge gravity in going forward. Incumbents already have data, will be future winners. If you have the data and it exists in your company, you can have use case scenarios, you can train the AI, and you're running. And you're running with good data and good information, and you don't need LLM to address it. So cheaper, better, faster. You look up a company called Hugging Face, for instance, or a company I started about 3.5 years ago in New York City called Vernique. You can go on their website. I'm stunned by the number of models and data sets that exist already in those sites. So take a look at it, and you'll be convinced of what I've been trying to tell you. I became convinced. The shift to mobile and internet created a whole new bunch of companies. As I said, it took 3 generations to get there. We are at the dawning of the age of artificial intelligence. And so it's the beginning. Our personal AI assistants can make all of us into polymath if you don't watch out. But anyway, there are very smart things that could really help us with it. And I end with the idea of a model of healthcare that is going to go forward. As I said, it's science-based, technology infused a lot with real good stuff of medicine. So whole care is, I think, the new form of medicine, for me at any rate, going forward, where we bring sick care and healthcare together and offer it to people, and using technology like AI and new sciences like telomere biology, mitochondrial biology, I can go into details later, to really blow the doors off this thing. And so we are looking, I wish I was 30 years younger. This is like another 30 years, 40 years of great run ahead of us. This thing is about to take off big time, but not get fooled into the bubble that is being forming, but stay with your expertise and use these things to go forward. I stop there. When we get to question and answer, if anybody wants any more details, I'll be happy to give.
The prior speaker made a very interesting point about AI, and I think that you've echoed that in the aggregate in your commentary. And we're going to be having Dr. Michael Wilson speak pretty extensively on AI and related in general and in specific applications. The point that gentleman made, which I thought was excellent, was that it's he called it a method, I think, but it's a tool. AI is a universal tool. And I think you made a very cogent point that AI was a bit ahead of its time a while ago. Now we have the computing power to bring it into the forefront. I think that's very relevant. We'll hear more about that.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Next, because we had a diverse group of panelists and our moderator is having some technical difficulty, I was going to speak next, and I was going to speak to the role of understanding the landscape and what VCs look for in healthcare startups, bridging the gap, how healthcare professionals work with VCs, and related topics. So by way of background, I'm a consultant in the healthcare space. I've been doing it for 39 years. I raise capital. I provide advisory services to early stage, intermediate stage companies, some later stage companies. I sit on a number of boards. I've been on close to 30 boards. I've done a substantial amount of licensing, tech transfer, proxy fights, and related activities. And I've done a fair amount of turnaround consulting. I've dealt with the venture capital community. I'm sure there are those that might not fully agree with some of the observations I'm going to make, but it's a huge industry, and there are a lot of perspectives on it. I think that what venture capitalists are looking for today is, I think, what they've been looking for all along. They want to put capital to good use, get a maximized ROI, and deploy capital effectively and intelligently, exit, redeploy capital. And many VCs re-up in a deal on the next round or a next stage. But I think that venture capitalists generally fit that mold, and I'm not sure that's going to change a lot. I think what's going to change is the areas of investment and the subject matter of the investment, but the intrinsic goals and objectives and values that they look for, I think, are going to remain relatively constant. If you may want to comment on that, Fred, or does anyone from the audience want to say something about that?
Well, venture capitalists have to change their model here. The basic model stays the same. That is that they want to get roughly 5 times in 5 years a return for their clients, 35% compounded return. And they shoot for, I never looked at a deal that was at least 50, so that, because they always get reduced over time. But the bottom line is that's what they look for. They have to change because the market has changed, maybe temporarily, but I don't think so. They want P&L responsible companies as opposed to just growth companies that grow and grow and grow. They never return money. So, by the way, that's the reason why I'm just going through a merger with my company, which was a very big growth company. We'll have $200 million top line and about $10 million or so EBITDA and the technology. So that's the kind of company they're going to be looking for. So I saw a lot of my brethren on both Silicon Valley and outside of it are looking for that and trying to do that kind of work. But they have to go into these new areas again responsibly.
I think that's a given. I think you've made that clear, and whether the dynamic is 5 and 5, and whether that changes a little bit or a lot. I think one other thing is happening more quickly. Just to complete the thought, you have a point to make, is that a lot of VCs are focusing on exits because exits help define 5 and the 5 or a lesser number in a shorter time frame. Hence, exits are a good solution to put a period into the investment and get the return. Marty, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Fred, do you think there needs to be a regulatory environment around the use of AI for healthcare?
Definitely. That's because you're dealing with people's information about their health and healthcare. And
I'm talking about there's people who are pretty unscrupulous in other parts of the world who do things. No, I'm serious.
Why is that limited to other parts of the world?
Well, because because the regulatory environment is pretty much being promoted right now in the United States, right? But when it comes to disease research,
well, hopefully today they're meeting with the government, with a couple of senators on the Hill, talking about what it is that we want to regulate. It's a very big subject. I don't know if we want to address it here, I certainly don't have a lot of it that I could really say. The bottom line is, when you deal with human data and health data, and some other countries do not worry about it, like China, but we worry about it and we think it's very important. There's a difference right there that we have to address. And so how do you keep it safe? How do you keep it relevant to the people who need to use it in order to do anything for you in healthcare. Lots of questions. But it is
Privacy
definitely gonna be-
issues, yeah. The privacy issues, of course, how do you make effective use of the data while maintaining the privacy of that healthcare data, especially important? I agree with all your comments, Fred, and very wise, but people want to go out and use 23andMe and find out their genome and what genes they have, as long as they can keep that information public. As you're well aware, a lot of employers want that information, by hiring someone that's going to be sick and so on. So it's a major battle. Privacy in the legal area is one of the most, it's at a critical juncture, has been for years, and it's going to be becoming more important.
You got a good background in that, so yeah, I think, I agree with you. I think that's very important.
My
But I
big
think-
concern
I
is
think if you don't
bioweapons
have-
research and Viomerse, right?
I'm sorry?
Bioweapons research, it's a big concern.
Well, I think,
AI and,
here's the reality. If a doctor wants to do something for you, if somebody is gonna take care of you, has to know the details. You open yourself up to all of that details, and then particularly with the new systems, it shows up in their, basically database. If you belong to, let's say, NYU Medical Center and you've got that whole system, your record is available to a lot of so-called providers within the system. It is already all over the place. It's amazing how it gets out. So we have a deeper problem to really solve. But if you really want to get cured, you gotta disclose how you feel, what's going on with you. And as soon as you do that, unless you keep it to yourself and nobody else knows about it, it's privacy is a problem. So we've got fundamental problems that we gotta solve.
Yeah, and
What
health,
Peter is referring to is the aggregation of the database and the aggregation, that data does not become public domain. But if it's executed correctly, Peter, the data is gathered, it's logged, it's collated, it's organized, it becomes a tool.
De-identified.
Yeah, identified. There's no real need to disclose specific data bits and data points.
Right.
But the ability to aggregate that and organize it, I think that's where the leakage could take place.
right, so the words, and then I'll let the other gentleman comment as well. The words that we've heard the last couple of years is precision medicine. Precision medicine because of your genomics. Cancer individually is just different, So and there's so many different types of cancer and how it affects your body, whether you have too much coffee, sugar, what your diet's like, all these issues. This is an area that I think Fred is exactly right. Precision medicine to the individual.
They also call it individual medicine. They give it different labels. I've heard precision, I've heard individual. Any other questions?
Major problem with that is it's very, very expensive.
A little louder?
It's very expensive precision medicine and addressing people individually on the basis of either their genomic information or proteomic, even more important. Look, there are 23,000 or so genes in the human genome.
Fred, what's the name of
There are
that test?
23,000
Cancers, 50
genes.
Photograph.
We know the human genome.
COLO.
But there are many times more proteins in the body
Absolutely.
than genes.
Our knowledge is very short, very small part of this whole great genome, but if whatever you've got, if it helps you, use it, So you want to do a whole genome sequencing, great. But, give you all kinds of genes you got.
Now, what I'm pointing out, Fred, is that we know the human genome now. The full panoply of the human genome has been described.
Right.
Very little has come out that's therapeutically useful from that genomic study. Because most diseases are polygenomic.
Right.
And they're epigenetic. There are sequences of chemical reactions that go into the soup of the cell that multiply the effects all over the place, so that tracing it back to particular genes.
That's true of a
Very,
lot of
very
it, but there's some
difficult.
specific areas. For instance, as I was saying, for Parkinson's disease, if you got LRR gene and if you got synuclein, if you identify those two, just like the Google guy, you can stay alive 30, 40 years. If you don't do it, so there's some specific areas where we can use the genes today to do some good.
There are specific, diseases are defined by single genes are legitimate targets for genomic
Right.
analysis and genomic therapy, replacement therapy, for example. But there are few of them.
Yeah.
Most our chemical reactions are far more complex than the genomic structure.
Right, the one example for all the women in the room especially, the BRCA gene, right? I mean,
Oh,
that's,
absolutely. If you got it in your family, you don't test, you're
a
done.
mistake.
You're just asking for it.
We're going to move to the next question, and that question is how healthcare professionals can engage with the venture capital community. My interpretation of that question is if a company is trying to obtain a financing with one or more venture capitalists or hedge funds or other sources, the question becomes how does that interaction take place? I think that I've done a large number of financings with venture capital entities, with hedge funds, others. And I think that the main impetus of getting that accomplished is a proper coordination between legal, financial, clinical, due diligence, patent lawyers, and the ability to have a successful financing is to have an organized plan to accomplish that financing. And that typically starts with the due diligence list from the venture capitalist or the funding source, reviewing that due diligence list carefully upfront, assigning duties and responsibilities to different groups to execute, complete, and facilitate closing the financing, prompt resolution of questions and issues, and related activities to get the financing closed. That's the overall objective. The overall objective is to commercialize what the company is looking to accomplish by bringing in the capital. Does anyone have any further comments or thoughts or would like to bring some additional points up?
Well, going around the VC community, which I've done for 40 years, and acting as a family office VC, I guess, in the healthcare space, the consensus amongst many people is that the venture capital model is broken down. If you think back in history, major pharmaceutical companies had their own basic research. They would play the numbers game, out of 10 projects, they were banking on maybe 1 or 2 hitting the market and carrying the company. That's how Merck got built, how Lilly got built, how Pfizer. Along comes the VC events with Silicon Valley. VCs start to emerge, funding high tech, and then pretty soon, startup companies in the research, R&D research and biology started up. And managers left the pharma companies, started their own companies, academics did the same sort of thing. And pretty soon, the basic research that was done by major pharma was now being devolved into startup companies. And pharma would wait and see, which is happening today, what are the successful projects and then start licensing them or acquiring them. So big pharma has largely become a financial institution, a set of financial institutions with late-stage development and distribution. But basic research is not done very much more in
What is the point?
So now what VCs are seeing is that venture capital that's going into individual binary kinds of projects in companies is a risky business. And it's a long time investment and it's a substantial investment because the regulations are increasing as we speak. So there is a trend now in VC ideology to start looking at assemblies of multiple shots on goal kind of opportunities, as old biopharma was doing in the beginning. The these big companies. So that trend towards non-binary, but either platform or multi-project, groups that are aiming at better success ratios is what.
I try to really change that thinking, trying to change that thinking. You were talking about allopathic medicine, again, drug companies and pills and what. That is yesterday, with all due respect. Some of it is gonna continue. It's very important because we get sick and some of those stuff is important. But the opportunities exist in not that circle. It's outside of it. This is why whole care, where you have healthcare and sick care addressed, or when you go into new areas of medicine in terms of how do we not be innovate as opposed to invent new things? Essentially, how do we put things together that could help people today? How do we, cause longevity to go better? So
Look,
we have some
As
people
much
who
as
do
you,
that expertise.
as
in
much
it.
as you don't like to say it, the size of the pharmaceutical industry addressing illness is multiplex higher than what you're aspiring to. And I don't say that what you're saying is wrong. I mean, getting healthy is a good idea, but it's not exactly a profit center.
Well,
for
I
a
can
hell of
tell
a lot
you,
of companies.
but if you look at the numbers, 12 or 13% of all of that goes into pharmaceutical industry. The rest of it is in services. I'm talking about services. Those the big numbers are in services.
I'd like to manage the hour of time. Let me say what I was going to suggest. We're talking about how to facilitate, expedite, get a venture financing done. Clearly, John, the medicinal, the pharmaceutical, the clinical aspects that we described in our earlier conversation that you so aptly brought to light are valuable. The point that I'd like to add and then turn it over to Dr. Wilson is that in the last 10 years, there's been a trend for big pharma to get into deals earlier and earlier and earlier. And I think that's been helpful, put a little pressure on the VC community to be a little more responsive. And I think that that's created, a balanced market opportunity. But let's bring that to a close. I'd like to ask Dr. Michael Wilson to speak about surgical education and embracing virtual methodologies, AI, extended reality, et cetera. And this company is utilizing that technology in a very primary way with its products. So, Mike, if you can deal with some of the questions that we've identified to convey to the audience and then work that into how Viomerse is executing on that, I think that's going to be valuable for our audience.
Thank you, Steve, and Marty, thank you for the invitation to speak. So as Steve mentioned,
I'm
I'm,
move you closer in,
oh,
so we can see on the camera. See, the screen's right there?
There we go.
There we go, perfect. So as Steve mentioned, our company Viomerse, we're a surgical education company. We create products that let surgeons learn surgery before they actually walk into the operating room and cut into a living person. So I want to give you some information about the market needs that we're addressing, but mainly address the implementation of current technology like extended reality and other items we're developing right now, namely AI, and where we see that going in the future and how our company is working to incorporate that in a better healthcare. So as I alluded to, the main need that our company is working to address is that modern surgical training still involves some level of inexperienced surgeons learning surgery, in part by operating on live patients. It's essentially on-the-job training in the operating room. It's the way surgeons have trained for hundreds of years. That dynamic hasn't changed as much as we would have liked, but it is a major cause behind medical error. And our company addresses this by selling a number of different products. Number one, we sell synthetic models of human anatomy, basically synthetic body parts that we call physical phantoms. These provide surgeons with a very lifelike, realistic hands-on training experience where they can cut into artificial models, resect tumors from, et cetera, and get the hands-on training that they need before they actually, again, go into the operating room. And we realize, though, that only solves one part of the training dynamic, because you can put a realistic model in front of an inexperienced surgeon, and if they don't know what procedure they're doing, they're not going to know where to get started. So we introduce educational technology as well, because you still need that expert surgeon giving them instruction while they're learning and while they're training. And for us, this is a remote training platform that runs through extended reality. And the current remote training platform that we have makes healthcare and makes surgical training accessible between student and proctor in separate geographical locations. And we're also looking for this application for live proctoring in the operating room, again, to give inexperienced surgeons that option to call an expert, if you will, during a live case. Now, one of the main, and this is where I'm going to get into the AI component. When we talk about surgical education, I mentioned that the teaching surgeon is critical for this, right? And we've termed this the busy surgeon problem, and this is a major area that we've been working on with AI. But the busy surgeon problem, as the name suggests, is that the expert attending surgeons that are educating the less experienced residents, they simply do not have time with their schedules to be teaching and training outside of the operating room. Their job is obviously performing surgery in the OR. That's the way their career is built. And that's why, unfortunately, a lot of the hands-on training with inexperienced surgeons gets moved into the OR. But we've been working to address this with AI for about 4 years now. Our company received 2 patents, I think one in 2019 and one in 2020, for AI-driven instructorless education using extended reality. And the concept here is that an AI program can guide a training surgeon through some early repetitions for a given procedure or a number of procedures, so that you can have the instructorless proctor, the AI proctor, if you will, give instruction, give error correction, and ultimately give performance assessment and allow trainee surgeons to learn on their own up to a certain level of competency before they enter the operating room and before their education continues there. And we see this again, we're first introducing this for training on physical models, on physical phantoms that we build and sell right now. We're also going to introduce these AI guidance tools into the operating room, and they're placed onto the existing extended reality platform that our company has developed. And one critical point to make here, and this actually goes back to a key point that Fred made, is that we really see this as a tool. We see this as something for the surgeons to use, but we are not trying to replace the teaching surgeon completely, because that's simply not possible. And we also, the AI component is not going to be making decisions in the operating room. It's simply a means of giving a surgeon during a live case the tools that he needs to make the best decision possible on how to proceed with a given case. But again, that's basically, we see AI tools in our field as augmenting the abilities of the surgeon, both in education and then in the operating room, but they're not replacing them in any case. So with that, I think I can pause there and take any questions, but again, we are moving forward we have commercialized our extended reality technology, and the company has again been working on AI tools for just about 4 years now.
Are you working with the university hospital systems that do so much, universities connected to the hospital systems where a lot of that training happens, and then there's a lot of specialty clinics? That's part one of the question. The second part is, we've seen a lot of new technology in the robotics area where the robots are doing the surgeries, and some of them are so precise, whether it be knee replacement and so on. Is that a competitor to what you're doing, or can you still train a doctor to use the robots to do the surgery?
Yes. So to address the first, well, I'll start with the second part first. Some of the robotic surgery systems, they're not quite competitors, but actually our equipment would build into the operating platforms for those. Like I'm thinking of the robotic system from Globus for spine surgery, and then of course there's Intuitive Surgical with the Da Vinci robot, are just 2 key systems. But we've developed our extended reality technology in a way that it can integrate with those systems. And critically, again, I'm thinking of the Da Vinci here, we've built our systems in a way that the see-through optic on the extended reality can give 3-dimensional view and can give the depth perception that's critical for certain procedures like that. But so I don't think it's and again, with the major caveat that each robotic system is different and each procedure is different. It's much less of a competitor, and it's more of a matter of integrating our device into the operating system of those platforms. And I'm sorry, can you repeat the first question?
Just university hospitals.
That first question, I think that we, as we've discussed, I think that, just hold the thought, I just wanted to embellish that a bit. I think that we are in a position to strategically align with the robotics companies because we bring value add. So we see it as a strategic licensing opportunity, a joint venture development opportunity. It falls within that umbrella, and I want to cut us to 5 more minutes so that, of course.
And you got 10 minutes left.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And Steve's exactly right. And that's what I mentioned. We had the Da Vinci system in mind when we developed certain parts of our extended reality headset. because of that ability to give the three-dimensional view, and then without getting into the details of how surgery is performed with the Da Vinci robot, using technology like ours can allow not just the person operating the robotic system who currently has his head encased in a console, but allow the other people in the operating room, in addition to the surgeon, to have a much better three-dimensional understanding and viewpoint of the surgical field. So again, I'll reiterate that we do see that as integrating into systems like.
The first question was just working with universities, because universities develop a lot of IP and a lot of younger medical students that are going through the training that I think could really use your product.
The answer is yes. We work with several medical centers. First and foremost, University of Rochester is a strong hospital. That's where our company founder currently works, and that's where we have an exclusive license agreement with them. And we work with several different departments of surgery for clinical validation and development of our products.
Mike, can you comment on our direct sales organization?
Mike, you're falling out of the
strategy
picture.
and our target market?
Sorry about that. Of course. Let me address what Steve asked first. But you actually raised a great question as to the market dynamics here. So the surgeons undergoing training, that responsibility lies on the Department of Surgery that they reside. So when we're talking about our target market and where we're going and who we're selling to, we are selling to the major medical centers in addition to other hospitals and medical facilities. But a lot of medical education is directly funded by the medical device companies that sell the products, again, like Intuitive Surgical. And therefore, the medical device companies themselves are also a major portion of our target market.
You mentioned these models for hands-on kind of training. Are these one-time use and then disposed?
Yes, they're consumable.
Yeah, and so what's the price point?
Our models are priced competitively on the market, generally in the range as low as $400, upwards of pushing $3,000, depending on the complexity. They're priced competitive to the other physical models and the cadaveric-based training that's out there.
So is there a possibility of using virtual surgery too? In other words, using similar things to the human anatomy, that's virtual anatomy that you can learn now as a student, which is very, very accurate, and you can rotate and you can expand and get depth perception as well and all those things. Would you
I'm going to suggest that
that kind of virtual surgery?
You want to get our fourth panelist in.
I agree. I'd be happy to connect offline and
Yeah, I think that's,
I don't mean to cut you off, John, just, we have a fourth panelist.
I just have a yes or no question. Are you collecting all the data as people are using your product and then feeding it back? It's a learning model?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
That's-
next person.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Would you be able to talk about revenue and burn rate, or that's someone else?
That's let's do that.
We can discuss that offline.
All right, thanks.
Dr. Vadim Shepel is going to comment on all the topics that we've addressed, and he's going to fill in the blanks, and
We're gonna do this in 2 minutes.
I think we've got 5 or 6 minutes. We've got 5 or 6 minutes left.
All of
and
these are easy
No
topics.
need to rush.
Yeah, no, thank you. Marty, thank you for having me on the panel. Oh, I appreciate it closely. It's really an honor. So I'll try to keep my comments high level. So by way of background, I've been fortunate to work on the payer side. I've worked in nonprofit in Africa and HIV and malaria. I've spent a lot of time here at Pfizer, just a few blocks down in the old offices in business development, corporate strategy, and have been on the biotech side as a chief business officer. Now, I recently started my new company, which is Bench to Bio, which is basically consultancy working with early stage startups to help them raise capital, to help them do partnerships. So, in case it's helpful, I could give a kind of a pulse on the street, to this group here, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for family offices to play a really big role in biotech and in healthcare in general, which I think will draw on a lot of themes that we've covered today. So what I've seen now, I think no surprise to everything that we've heard over the past 2 days, is funding is very tight for biotech. So I think there are periods, I heard this saying recently, that there are periods where the money gets ahead of the science, and that's where, maybe we've seen in the early 2000s with genomic companies, certainly seen it in end of 2021, and there are periods where science gets ahead of the money. And I think now we're actually in a period where, the latter, and I think this presents a lot of opportunity because a lot of the, what I call blue chip VC funds are now thinking more like, and this may be a controversial statement, but they're become more risk averse, right? And they're sitting on dry powder, they're waiting for the right timing. And to me, I think that presents a great opportunity for family offices. I speak to founders every day. The science is still there. They're still, moving along. And they're in what's now called the valley of death. They've run, some lab studies. They run, studies in early animals. And when they come to large venture funds, they say, well, when are you going to be in humans? They say, well, if we were in humans, we wouldn't be coming to you guys, right? And so they need some help. And I think there's a lot of really good opportunities there because the science hasn't stopped. The patient need is still there. So I think that presents a really great opportunity. I saw a statistic recently that family offices now account for double the assets under management of hedge funds. Please keep, you can keep me honest on this after this. But unlike VC funds, you don't have a limited time window of return. You don't have LPs to be accountable for. So I think a lot of the themes that we've covered on today, like longevity, like moving from a sick care system to a healthcare system, I think everyone on this call in this room can really play an active role and really champion that. So in terms of the broader themes that I'm seeing, we've touched on longevity. That's something I've been personally interested in. What I've seen as a trend is maybe whereas 2 or 3 years ago, there was longevity on this side and traditional pharma on this side, where you had conversations about living to 200, and then you had your brick and mortar, kind of oncology assets. I think there's a convergence here, and I think pharma is actually preparing itself emotionally and mentally of a move to a more prevention-based model. That is my hope. And I think there are companies now, which I, am very interested in, that are a hybrid model. They're not a true longevity play, and they're not a true biotech, and they're combining these.
It's very interesting that the way you framed the words, and Fred didn't use those words, but you've overlaid a good thought. What I'm seeing is insurance companies are extending high levels of reimbursement, advancing big dollars towards anticipatory, towards preventative, to use a term. And I think that's been here for at least 7, 8, or 9 years now. And I think, Fred, that shows us that at least somebody on the landscape is paying attention to what the right vision should be, the vision that you're identifying in this
Well,
fashion.
I tried to do it at Oxford, the company that
That's right.
I was the chairman. And I turned around and all that, sold it to United Healthcare, but United to this date is not really following the they're coming in the right direction, and they're really realizing prevention is so much cheaper. So much cheaper.
There's tons of data that demonstrate that it is, but I think a lot of insurers are moving in that direction.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, okay.
Can I push you on that subject? Like if Big Pharma is ready?
I'm not saying it's ready. I'm saying it's.
I don't think it is. How would you react to that? The issue with prevention, there is no money in prevention. And if you study macroeconomics, it concludes kind of decisively that actually healthcare is, because of the nature of being public good, is actually, that's where the market fails. There are 2 or 3 areas of life where market forces do not work actually. Education one, and healthcare unfortunately is the other one. That's why actually everywhere in the world, UK, Europe, or Japan, or Canada, which have far better health indicators than us, have actually government regulated pricing, services, and so on, right? So aren't we inherently conflicted to even impose market forces through even the folks putting in charge of a hen house, right? Like a big pharma, to do something that inherently is impossible to do in the market force. Capitalism works brilliantly almost everywhere, but not in healthcare.
That's a great question. I like to think that it could be different. So I think it is not working today, which is why we have all the complications that we have with PBMs and different stakeholder systems, right? The incentives are not built for prevention. That doesn't mean to say, again, I'm an inherent optimist. I like to think just because that is the tangled web we're dealing with right now, it doesn't mean that in 10 years, it doesn't, it has to be that way. I would challenge everyone to think, okay, if that is the world that has to look like, how can we work backwards from that? What does it look like for prevention to be economically feasible? What does it look like? What does the world have to look like for prevention to be incentivized for all the different healthcare players, from the physician all the way to the payer, to the pharma company, et cetera, right? And then, you heard, I think Bradley Tuck was here on regulatory yesterday, right? I'm sure that if we combine our efforts, we could push the right levers to redesign that. It may be optimistic, right? But I do think that, look, the current, I don't think this is a controversial statement, the current environment is not feasible, right? So we just have to figure a different way.
We have time for one last question.
To your point, before we take one more question.
And
then
from
I think
somebody
we're out of
different,
time.
somebody different.
Yeah, I want to just add one thought to your point, and while prevention has the obstacles that we've discussed without identifying it, hospitals today and other medical facilities are disincentivized and penalized by reimbursement bodies for failing to achieve results, so that if a guy's had a cardiac event and he's out and he's back within 45 days, that hospital is not going to get the full boat of reimbursement, or maybe they're not going to get any of the reimbursement. So there are mechanisms in place in the system. While it's not optimal, I do have a different view of preventative. I think the insurers are a little further along than everybody thinks, but that's one man's view. But I think that there's disincentive for failing to perform. That's what I do want to say. One other question from a new party. Okay.
Closing statements. You want to do closing statements?
Closing statement is, the original discussion was the venture capital community, how to work with that community, what they're looking for. And what I seem to synthesize from what's been said and what I've heard at this session, and what I know is their financial rewards remain roughly the same. Products, technology, and market changes and changes in landscape is what is driving the new era. New products, the right focus, being in the right position with the right product areas, maximizing those opportunities is, I perceive, how the venture capital community focuses itself in today's times.
Do you want to make a statement, Fred? Closing statement, a closing
Well,
statement?
the closing statement is like there's always a big mountain to climb in anything that is you want to try to disrupt. And we as a nation have always disrupted. And so we're at a very important point. Telemedicine, for instance, came alive because of COVID. You couldn't see their doctors, now they're forced to see together. So that become now part of the whole medical practice. There are so many of these innovations that are just put in there. People are smarter. They go onto the web, they find out what diseases they never had before. So this revolution is going to come from the bottom up as opposed to from the professionals. And doctors, either they could get with it or they're going to lose their practice, basically. People just don't want to sit in their waiting room and then getting the same standard stuff that they heard, they read in the, on the web, and it doesn't jive with what they're saying. So anyway, this thing is happening. I think this revolution is happening.
I completely agree. The docs are being minimized every day, but the hospitals are taking over the practices, et cetera.
This guy, Dr. Peter Attia, wrote a book on longevity. He got partnered with Oprah. Since then, we've seen a bunch of deals in the longevity area. The argument I have is longevity really isn't the issue. It's the quality.
Sure. Next closing statement, please.
Only thing to say is that, yeah, there are major opportunities out there for good returns for these innovative technologies that we're continually figuring out the best way to implement them, whether it's genomics or AI. But from a regulatory and a patient care perspective, these are increasingly playing roles in healthcare, and just that there are great opportunities out there.
Marty, we should have your mother talk about longevity. 101.
It's all about drinking clean water and saying the rosary every day.
How old is your mother?
101.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Holy.
That's crazy. Not much I can add on that.
Did you have something to say?
I will just say one thing. I think we touched on really good themes today. Fred brought up a good point about Parkinson's, right, and pesticides. Something that I'm very passionate about is how can, we have so much innovation in treatment. I think we've over-indexed on treatment and under-indexed on prevention. I think that's a lot of what we talked about today. So how can we take 1/4 of the brain power that we have currently on treatments, on gene therapies, precision oncology, all of these, and actually direct it towards clean, making sure we can get food without pesticides in it, right? A clean supply chain, clean agriculture, not rocket science stuff, right?
And the final statement is,
No, sorry, what you said was very relevant to what John was saying much earlier in the conversation, that we've characterized the genomes, we've characterized everything, and there's been precious little that's come out of all that characterization. So I think that that's not an unfair comment, and there are real opportunities that emanate from what you're identifying.
I'll say Rome wasn't built in a day.